Welcome to Deja Vu Sunday,
Yeah.
October 11th today.
You're feeling a little bit of deja vu. It's because we are. It's Sunday morning, and Ethan's starting radiation this week.
Yeah.
So, if you haven't been keeping up, or if you're just checking in, last week he was supposed to start radiation, and that got changed right before it was supposed to start, and they decided to put his skull back in, which is, in the surgeries that he's had, it's like, oh, just putting his skull back in.
Yeah, just a cranioplasty, no big deal. Small degree of complication.
Yeah. So that was last Monday. They put that back in, and even though it's kind of a change in plans, I think overall,
It's good for our overall timeline. I think it's good for Ethan's recovery. It's good for PT. It's good for his state of mind.
I think he's going to be much happier having that in. He hated that helmet, so I think having a skull back so that he doesn't have to wear that helmet will be so much better for his overall quality of emotional and physical happiness. But so now we're recovering from a major surgery.
And this surgery should really, you should really give like 2 weeks for recovery time before you really do much, and we're not really giving him any recovery time. And so Wednesday was his last day of like just relax, and then Thursday he went down
For a CT.
Right, and they were just checking his ventricles to make sure that the fluid levels were good, and so the CT scan on Thursday went just fine.
Right, and even though CT is quick and easy, like it's not quick and easy. Like he can't eat or drink, and then you have to wait, and you have to have transport come and pick you up. Then you have to go all the way down and across the hospital, in the gurney bed, and then you have to have anesthesia, and it's just the whole. None of it's that like hard, and the doctors and nurses are wonderful, but it's just a lot, for Ethan. And you think, like, if you've ever had surgery, I mean, he has stitches that go everywhere.
It's on the right side.
On the right side. He has stitches everywhere.
Yeah, a lot of them. I actually want to count just to see how many there are.
Yeah, and
then Friday, he needed to go down and across the street, get an ambulance ride to
go 0.3 miles.
Yeah, point.
But to do that, he needs 2 paramedics and a nurse to transport him across the street. And then the paramedics and nurse stay with him because they have to transport him back in the ambulance. And then, he needs anesthesia.
Yeah.
And so you have that protocol. So just the amount of staffing just for, a simple scan or whatever is just a lot. So Friday morning he had new mapping done, because now that he has the bone back, the mapping that he did previously is no longer
out of date.
Yeah,
it's out of date.
And then so that was hard for him because he's like, I've already done this, and it's like, well, you did do this, but you get to do it again. Then we came back, and they couldn't back his MRI right up, so they had to bring him out of sedation. He was out of sedation for like, I don't know, an hour and a half, and then he had to go back down to get an MRI to have, the most detailed images for radiation. And then I think they also were checking the shunt and everything one more time.
The shunt has a valve at the top that you can increase or decrease the flow, and
with a magnet. So you can turn it with a magnet.
Yeah. But everything looks good on the shunt, and so that's a really encouraging thing that it's doing its job. It's going well.
Yeah, I think the hard part about Friday was I just felt like he was being tugged this way and that way. And, he had all these stitches. He was still recovering from surgery, and just, the poor kid.
And he's got swelling like a lot on his near his temple. It's all just kind of like coming right down here, and so
it looks like he has a huge cheekbone, and his eye is it's really hard for him to open his. I'm using the wrong hand. Right eye, his left eye opens fine, but his right eye, he can open it if he really concentrates, but for the most part it just doesn't open. And then I was worried about that, but the doctor said, well, it's swelling.
So question that we get a lot is, so how is Ethan doing? How is he handling all of this? And I feel like it's this is not just the physical battle, but the emotional battle of trying to keep him encouraged and keep him in it, and trying to help him understand what's going on, because we talk about these things, but we need him to understand it as much as possible. And so he's having some more good questions about why is this happening.
Yeah, he asked, he's like, why do I have to be the one that has a headache maker? And I was like,
Bad luck.
I don't have a good answer for that. And,
Yeah.
but I feel like he has a pretty good grasp of what's happening. I mean, he actually hasn't said the word cancer himself, although I think he probably has put that together and just not voiced it. We've talked about healthy cells and unhealthy cells. A lot of the little details of what this scan for and what that scan is for, some of it I feel like would just overwhelm him. And then by the time he'd actually process it, it's old information. But I think he has a pretty good grasp of what's happening, and he knows about the seizures, and he knows that he was asleep for 3 weeks. He knows about the swelling. I think he knows for the most part, his meds and things like that. So I feel like it's this fine line between like answering his questions so that it helps him understand and is comforted by that information,
Right.
without like giving him so much information that he just becomes unnecessarily anxious and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So, kind of this G-rated, PG-rated, without overdoing it and also without underdoing it.
Right.
I think he knows that he's really sick, and for the most part, he doesn't really ask, why am I here? When can I leave?
Yeah.
I think more than anything, he's frustrated that his leg doesn't work. He asked yesterday, like, why can't I walk? I could walk before my surgery. Why can't I walk now? And that does make sense because, he was supposed to have the surgery because his leg wasn't working, and now his leg is working less.
Yeah.
So I think most of his motivation that we're hoping develops is just the motivation to do some physical therapy. He's really resistant. And I don't know how much of that is just because it's hard and he's scared, and how much of it is just because he genuinely does not feel good.
Yeah.
And that's another hard line for us, because it's like, we've had people come to the house forever and do therapies with him. And sometimes you just kind of have to push him and have him try something new and
Push him out of his comfort zone.
Right. And so it's like, how do you do that? 2 weeks ago, we were wanting him to do physical therapy, and he was totally resistant to it. And it was like, oh, you're having a massive hemorrhage.
Right.
And, so that parental guilt is hard.
And real.
Yeah. And it's like, I know we're doing the right thing. And I know that if we hadn't have brought him to the ER, that we would have ended up here. Like, he would have had a stroke or a seizure or something, that would have brought us here anyway.
Eventually.
Like, this wouldn't have gone away. But it's also, we brought him to the hospital, and we agreed to the surgery, and, we're signing consent to all of these treatments that
Sign his life away.
yeah, and that are going to be hard. And he goes, why are the nurses and why are the doctors doing, X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, your parents are the ones saying that this is okay. So,
oh, poor kid.
Yeah, it's just hard, because I know he needs a chance, and I know we need to try, but it's also hard knowing that this is gonna make his life harder. Yeah.
So that kind of brings us to not only is how is Ethan doing, but how are we doing as parents? And it's a roller coaster ride. And last week we talked a little bit about the dichotomy of our life, where everything at home is good, and here is the roller coaster. But I think that when I look at the task in front of me, I have to be strong and courageous for him, and be this positive, joyful, influence for him, because if I'm losing it, like, that is only going to make things harder for him. And so I don't know if it's like this self-coaching that I give myself, like we've got this, and confidence as we go through this. And so I know that we're like halfway through. This is the start of this is the end of week 7.
Halfway through this leg.
Yeah, this leg. And so we're week 7, and we think radiation should last another 6 or 7 weeks. And so, you know, we're in this for the long haul, and I can't think that I'm running out of juice now. I need to know that I'm strong here, and I've got energy in the tank, I've got fuel in the tank, because that's what Ethan needs. And so I think for the most part, I'm holding in there pretty well. I feel like everything else in my life is normal and taken care of, and the kids are good, and the home is good, and so plate management has been appropriate. But you know, it's definitely a lot to be coming to the hospital and dealing with this whole other world.
I think it helps being able to see Ethan, you know,
Yeah.
like we've seen him the last 7 weeks. You know, his grandparents and other family members, you know, haven't seen him. So, you know, to see Ethan in person and to interact with him and still feel connected, you know, it's not like he just disappeared from home. You know, Joey and I still feel really connected, and he's right here in front of you, you know, like here he is, and
he's being himself
for the most part, except for when he's, you know, really not feeling well.
Right.
And so I think the idea that like he's right here today, you know, like I can spend all day with him, and I can be happy to be here with him. I don't need to be sad about something in the future or
that may or may not have happened anyway.
Right. And so it's like I think we got to plan long term, but we can't necessarily think about all those decisions that have to be made.
Right.
And you know, we can't live the future right now. We got to kind of just do today right now, and Ethan is here right now, and you know, we've got all the time in the world to spend with him right now, and so that feels good.
Yeah.
You know, and I try not to think, you know, you can't think too much or too deep. I don't really think that that's like suppressing emotions. Maybe a little bit, but you know, I think we just have to focus on where we are right now in this journey, and you know, when the next step comes, we'll cross that bridge when it gets here. So I think not getting too far ahead of us, because things change.
Yeah. Do they ever change?
So one thing that just kind of hit home, Susie sent this to us, it was a couple
weeks ago.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. And so this is by Jen Hatmaker, and she's an author, blogger, podcaster. She said, "We can be deliriously happy and unthinkably sad at the same time. We can be full of gratitude and full of sorrow. We can be carefree as a kindergartner and as burdened as we ever imagined. We can love God and be so mad at him. We can adore every single thing we are looking at while suffering over every single thing we are remembering. We can hold tight to the impossible mercies and rage over impossible losses. This is life. Apparently, this is life. We get it all. We don't get the good without the hard. We don't get the love without the risk. We don't only get all the wins. We don't only get the losses. We get it all. Our only choice is to hold our hands open to everything. It all gets to come in. It all has to be felt and lived and experienced. This makes up a human life. It also makes for good humans, the real ones, the ones who refuse to live an edited life. Only the good half, because the other half is just as real and just as valuable. What a terrible system, but here we are. Here's to all of us living both sides of the story at once. We can do this."
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we are.
Yep.
I feel like
we got all the good and we got all the bad.
Yeah. And if this is the path that God has asked us to walk, like, we will obediently walk it.
Yeah.
And I think these are happy tears and sad tears, because I know we're not alone in this.
Nope.
And, you know, if God has asked us to walk these steps and to carry this out, like, we will obediently do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's really sad because we kind of know where this is going.
Yeah.
And that's hard, and it's sad for Ethan. It's sad for us. But we can do it.
Yeah.
So here's a happy episode.
Well, let's end on a happy note.
Okay.
So, the neurosurgeons come down and visit Ethan, and this is yesterday, and so they're checking his shunt and looking at it.
And they're just all, I mean, they are wonderful and have been providing excellent care, but they're, you know, all business. The nurses have just this amazing, like, bedside care, and they just are so relational. And neurosurge is, like, on this other, like, upstairs, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what they're like, well, upstairs. And they're just so business, you know,
Yeah.
like, they got things to do and medical stuff, and,
Yeah.
you know, like, you know, anyway, it's just, it's just very...
So you tell the story, because you were in the room.
So the neurosurge, she comes down and she wants to check Ethan's shunt, and she has like this little like magnet double compass thing. I mean, it had like a compass arrow, and it's like this two things. So she'd put one on, and then she'd put the other one on, and she'd turn it, and then she'd put one on. And Ethan was eating Tic Tacs, and so she kept or I guess Jelly Bellies, cotton candy Jelly Bellies, and she kept telling him not to chew. And I was like, the more you tell him not to chew, the more he has to chew.
Yeah.
So he's like trying to slowly not chew. And she's like, stop moving, because every time he moves, the little compass needle moves. And so she's trying to like gauge it, and she's putting it over his shunt and switching it. And he asked her what she was doing, and she's, you know, telling him in a very matter-of-fact way. And he goes, don't you know about the law of gravity? And she's focused. He goes, the law of gravity says what goes up must come down, so why did you put it on the top of my head? You should have put it down lower. He also calls it his what does he call it? Oh, his turkey egg. and so he goes, are you looking at my turkey egg? And she, like, you know, is still, you know, working and talking at the same time. And I said, I think he means goose egg, because, you know, his shunt, like, it's just under his skin, so there is a significant like bump, and it really does kind of look like if you hit your head and had a goose egg.
Yeah.
And so I said, I think what he means is it's not turkey egg, but goose egg. So, you know, he wanted to know about the law of gravity, and so she told him, well, you know, it's draining down. And then she kind of was cleaning up to leave, and she turned back and she goes, but you're right about the law of gravity. So leave it to Ethan to put neurosurge question their
put them on their toes.
Question their basic science principles. So I don't know which teacher taught him about the law of gravity, but good job.
Yeah. So we should be going to radiation this week, but who knows? Who knows? So we'll try and keep you updated this week. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We appreciate your love and support. So till next time.